Hello, hello. I am Natalie Pickett. I am an entrepreneur from Melbourne, Australia. Welcome to this live in the Women Helping Women group and also broadcasting elsewhere today. I'm just going to wait a few minutes for a few more people to jump on. I can see a few already joining us. So, quite a few people have said they're interested in this topic and looking forward to sharing with you today. So, we'll just wait a minute, see if anyone else jumps on. Okay, let's get started. As I mentioned, my name's Natalie Pickett. I am a serial entrepreneur and I am from Melbourne, Australia. Coming to you live today from the beautiful seaside coastal town of Byron Bay in New South Wales. One of those lucky people who gets to be a digital nomad and work from anywhere. So I'm having a couple of weeks up here enjoying the beach and the sunshine. I'm originally from Melbourne, spent time living in different areas around the world as well. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 30 years and also a business mentor for around 12 years. Serial entrepreneur. I like turning my passions into business, and I have a few different businesses in the wellness space, in business and business mentoring, as well as in sparkling wine. Today's topic, though, is about how to get published in 2022, and I'm going to be sharing my own experience about how I became an international best-selling author, and also showing you 3 different ways and explaining how that publishing process works for those different ways for those of you who are interested. I want to make this interactive, so feel free to ask questions. I've put my glasses on so I can read comments and things like that as we go. And feel free to ask questions as we go. If you, as I said, I want to make this interactive, so please put a little comment there and let us know where you're from and what you do. That would be great. So that can help give me ideas in terms of where to keep the focus of the live today as well. I put a post in this group this week to say, hand on heart, how many of you have either dreamed or have a goal to be a published author? And I must admit, since I was a little girl, I had that dream. Like, I loved those romantic stories that, about those beautiful female writers of history, like Emily Dickens, is it Dickens? And the Bronte sisters, Agatha Christie, and I love that idea of being able to travel and write and work from wherever in the world. So if that's a dream for you too, did any of you have that experience where you had that wish since you were young? I always wanted to travel, as I said, and I thought being a writer would be a romantic way to do it. I did end up with most of my career in the travel industry, so including having a travel company for 15 years. So I did manage to have that passion, but it took me years until I actually converted my passion of being a published author as well. My husband, who's no longer my husband, but he was my husband for about 15 years, was a published author, and I ran that side of the business as well as my travel company as well. So a lot of experience that was in traditional publishing. I'm going to talk about that as one of the examples. There's a lot to get through in 30 minutes, but as I mentioned, I'm happy to make it interactive. So if you've got any questions, then feel free to put those in the chat, and I will try to get to those. If you've just jumped on, I did mention if you could put a comment and let us know where you're from or where you are today, and also what you do, so that it can help me focus the direction today as well. About 10 years ago, I did start to develop that dream and started writing a book, and it was when I was going through a major crisis. And I think as writers and storytellers, we want to be able to share our experience to help others, and particularly, if you're a coach or a mentor, we take our own experiences and use those to be able to help others to grow their business, and being published is a great way to do that. So about 10 years ago, I started writing out chapters for a book. I did got it quite a way developed, and then I just let it sit. And sometimes the energy around things wasn't, you don't feel it and it's not right. And it's that to push forward on that project, it doesn't feel right. That could be our own fear coming up, but sometimes it's not the right time for you. So I let it sit for a while. And it's interesting because about this time last year, I started looking at those chapters again and thinking, is this really something that I really wanted to do? I mentioned my husband was a published author, had around 10 books published, and I did run that side of the business and help him develop that. So the 3 ways we're going to talk about, 3 ways to get published. One is traditional publishing through a traditional publishing house and how that method works, and sharing a little bit behind the scenes on that. And then we'll talk a little bit about self-publishing, and then I'm also going to talk about the co-author experience in creating anthologies as well. How does that sound? Let's put an emoji in there in the comments. Hello Sandra, thanks for joining us. New Jersey, 20 years, senior level except on Wall Street, and co-founded my own beauty brand. That's great, Sandra. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to jump on there and put in the comments, because that will help me focus on where we need to go with today's presentation. So with traditional publishing, well, actually, for those of you who are on, can you put a yes in the comments if it is? I guess it is because you're here, but can you put a yes in the comments if it is your dream to be published? Some of you may already be published, so feel free to share that as well. I know there's quite a few people in the group. Texas multi-Medi-Spa owner Cassie, is it? Cassie Sierra, hello. Thank you for putting a comment in there. It's always good to get feedback. I'm used to doing more live public speaking, and you bounce off the audience, so lives are always a little bit challenging to get that interaction happening as well. But hello and welcome. Sandra says yes, it is a dream to be published. And have you had that dream since you were younger, as I was sharing earlier about, having that idea since I was a young girl, that romanticized dream of being a published author? So my first experience in publishing was actually my husband getting published, and that is quite a process, and that was through the traditional publishing industry. So how that works with traditional publishing, you create your manuscript first. Sometimes you might just create a few chapters and send off those chapters. You develop it to a stage with all of your writing. If you're published in any magazines and articles and things like that, I always advise you to get a copy editor to help you. It's always good to have another form of another view, another pass of somebody going over your whether it's a chapter, article, or manuscript for a book. So developing that manuscript, you're doing quite a lot of work first before you're even putting it out there. As I said, sometimes you can create a first few chapters, but usually for a first time author or writer, a full manuscript is what they would want to see. You don't go straight to a publishing house. Most publishing houses will not take unsolicited manuscripts. They'll only take it from an agent. So the first thing to do is to get an agent. And the quality of the agent is really important, because you want an agent who already has the in to those different publishing houses. So it's quite a convoluted and long lead time from when you've created your manuscript until when you are able to get published. And that agent also is going to try a whole lot of different publishing houses, and they're not always going to say yes. So in the case that I was mentioning, my husband, when he was first published, a few top publishing houses said no to his first book, but then one of the major publishing houses did pick it up, and it did become a bestseller. So even if the quality of your manuscript is very good, it doesn't mean you're always going to get an immediate yes, and it must go through an agent to the publishing house, and then that can actually take a year or two by the time you're actually published. And the other thing about that is, in terms of, I said about the quality of the agent, but also the quality of the publishing house. So publishing houses, they're very good at distribution. They have all the bookstore networks and really good at distribution that way. But what I've found, not just through working with my husband, but other writers that I know, they're often not really good at marketing. They don't do much marketing on your book, so that they print it, they distribute it, and then there's not much else that's done. They might be able to get a little bit of PR, but not much else is done. And the way that works as well for you, the author, is the publisher holds the rights to publishing that book, and they are the ones that receive the income for that book. So usually it's a split between the publishing house and also the retail bookstores. And then you as the author, your percentage is paid in royalties, so it's only based on sales. And does anyone know how much the percentage is that an author makes from their book sales? Anyone? Looking for a comment there. Yeah, so often the publishing house, not always, but often there will be an advance, and we hear these stories of someone getting $1 million advance for their book. That's very unusual and unlikely. The advance is usually somewhere in the realms of 10, 20,000 for a first book. Maybe a little bit more if you've already got a profile, but it's a lot smaller than that, and it is an advance on royalties. So your book sales and your royalties go towards repaying that advance first before you get any income back. And for many authors through that traditional publishing, they don't actually, sometimes they never repay their advance. So aside from the advance, they don't get any more income from the book sales. So no one's put in a guess, but yeah, royalties through traditional publishing is 10% of the retail. So if the book's retailing for $29, for example, the author gets $2.90 per sale. It's not, you've got to sell a lot of books to make money out of those book sales. And as I said, initially those royalties go to repay your advance. And it does take a lot of time. It's, for those who I know who've been published that way, they will say that it's worth it. But also now, with online distribution and with all of those online bookstores, the ways to get published have become a lot easier as well. So I'm going to share with you a couple of other things. Is that news to anyone? Let me see in some comments there. Is there anything that I've shared there that you've said, oh wow, I didn't know that? Put something in the comments. That's good. So it is interactive. As I mentioned, that's traditional publishing. I'm going to share with you 3 different ways to get published. So I'm also going to talk about now self-publishing. So self-publishing kind of has worked the same way in the past, that you would still go to a publishing house to self-publish. And the type of people in the publishing industry, it's known as vanity publishing. I don't agree with that, because I think anyone who's, thank you Sandra, you're not surprised on those royalty amounts, thank you. So as I said, it's sometimes referred to as vanity publishing. I don't agree with that term necessarily, because I think when people go to self-publishing, what they're wanting to do is share their knowledge and experience with the wider world. So it's not necessarily about vanity, but it is about you getting your message out. So traditionally that self-publishing has become from more the self-help industry, personal development, coaches and physicians, those sort of industries and areas, and people wanting to self-publish. So the book is one way to get that information out, as well as all the online platforms and things that we have. And it's a way to share that experience, share your experience, share your knowledge, and get the word out there. Going to those type of publishers is expensive, and your rates are probably somewhere in the realms of $10,000 to $20,000, depending on the type of book. And I have heard of some people needing to mortgage their house to create, that was a different style of book with lots of pictures and things in it. So yeah, it can be an expensive way to do it, self-publishing. Now with Amazon, and there are other global platforms as well that will do print on demand and do that distribution as well. So it kind of has opened up the playing field a lot to be more accessible for a lot of people. But the same thing with self-publishing is the same thing that I mentioned with the traditional publishing, is you've got to have a marketing campaign. If you're in business, which I know most of you are, you know that it's not just about creating the product. Once you create the product, you've then got to have the marketing around that to be able to sell it. And it's the same with books. So yes, you can list something on Amazon, and Amazon has algorithms and things like that, but unless you know how to take advantage of those and leverage those and get that happening for you, and other marketing platforms that you're doing that feed into a promotional campaign, you can do all of that work. You're still going to, still need a designer to design the internal pages of your book. You're still going to need copy editors to do all the copy editing for you. You're still going to need designers to do cover designs, all of those sort of things, formatting everything, and then upload it. But without a marketing campaign, there's no sales. We know that for any product. And I say to people when they think that they've created a website, that because they've created a website, they're now going to get lots of promotions. But the same thing with a website is you still need to market your website to bring people to it. So it's the same idea with a book as well. So self-publishing is definitely a lot easier than it used to be. You may still feel more comfortable going to someone who has experience in that and paying them to do the publishing and project management, and they've got the teams and the resources to do all of that. Or you can do it yourself, and I'm not a coach on that, there are some coaches that just show you how to put things onto Amazon, and I know there's a few in this group that do journals and things like that as well. In my experience in the self-publishing, it's a little bit scary. In one of my businesses, in my sparkling wine business, we are publishing like coffee table books with that. So it's still a lot of work to pull all that together and get all the design and everything with that as well. But with those wine books, I already have a ready market for that as well. So that's what I want you to think about if you're going to go down that path of self-publishing, is how would you promote that book? How would you get the sales from that book? Very important thing to consider there as well. Other thing I'm going to talk about, any questions on anything that I've covered so far? The other thing that I'm going to talk about is co-author or anthologies, and this was how I became a best-selling author just in a space of a couple of months. So I mentioned about creating chapters for a book. I really still think that book may happen, but in my mentoring and in my life in general, I always try and look for the easiest pathway. So that's why it's valuable to work with a mentor or a coach or someone who's been where you want to go, so they can show you the easiest pathway. So sometimes we make life a lot harder than it needs to be. Sometimes we put up our own barriers. Sometimes we have our own resistance. I'm not beating myself up for the fact that I wrote those chapters and to start to develop that book and it hasn't happened as yet, because I realised that I've developed as a person a lot more since then as well. So when and if I do decide to complete that as a full book on its own, I know it's going to be more developed. But what I have had is actually a wonderful experience of collaborations by working as a co-author in an anthology book. And that has been quite amazing. So an opportunity came up actually through this group. Thank you, Jane, for all good. Thank you. An opportunity came up through this group to be a co-author in a book. So I did the interview and was accepted, and in the space of just 3 months I wrote my chapter, and in the space of just 3 months I went from I've been published in articles in news publications and things, but not having a book published. I went from that to not just the idea of thinking one day to being not just a published author, because we used a publisher who knows how to do those promotions on Amazon and all of those sort of things, we went to international bestseller within, well, actually went to bestseller within 40 minutes of release, and then we went to, over the space of the next week or so, we went to international bestseller, and I think we're up to like 7 countries in that first book, and the second book in that series has just come out as well. So the co-author idea, when that first launched, I just said to everybody in our group, we did a live promotion, and I said every book should be an anthology, because it's not just valuable for you as the co-author, it's also valuable for the reader, because they get to have so many different stories and so many different experiences. And although in those collaborations you often get lots of diversity in terms of experience and things like that, there is also a lot of things that you align on, so the messaging and theme can be quite similar coming through as well. So the way the co-author works is that you make a contribution. So you're making a contribution as a writer. There's also a financial contribution. So it is like that self-publishing, but it's a lot less than if you were trying to do that on your own. So that contribution covers things like the publisher, it covers the production team as well, project managing, all of it, as well as promotions. And when you think about it as co-authors in the books that I've been in so far, and also some that we've got coming up that I'll share with you, I don't know if you can hear, but we've got some local bird life, some kookaburras in the background there. As I mentioned, I'm coming to you live from the veranda in my guest house in Byron Bay, so hopefully you can still hear me over the kookaburras. And yeah, so that co-author experience is everybody contributing into that. And when you think about that, you know, as one person on your own promoting, you're only going to go so far. But with, you know, co-authors, 10, 20, 25 different co-authors, the leverage of that and the reach of that is so much more expansive. And yes, you don't get royalties because the publisher is the one where the royalties go. But as I mentioned, if you're going through the traditional method of getting published, your royalties are around 10%. So you need to sell a lot of books that way. But through the co-author experience, you can buy books at the wholesale price, and then you become the reseller to sell those at the retail price. So the margins of those are so much better. Your wholesale price, it'll depend on the book and the shipping and all of that sort of thing. But say, for an example, you manage to get the wholesale price, it's $10. The book retails for $25. You've got some shipping in there. Your margin's going to be much better, around $10 per book. That's a lot more income back to you in terms of how you can monetize and sell that. So there's the return on investment that way, but it's not just about that. It's also leveraging, I was talking about those promotions, and leveraging those to promote you and your business and what you do. One, you're getting to share your story in a chapter in the book, and two, you're going to be part of that network, that collaboration of promotions as well. So it's not just, yes, it is promoting the book, but it's an opportunity for you to promote you over and over again. And if you were to purchase, thank you, Jane, thank you, congrats, that's amazing. Yes, international bestseller. That's the other thing also in those co-author experiences. If you think about me just needing to create a chapter, I actually went back to those original chapters I created and repurpose some of that to be the foundation of the chapter that I was writing as well. And I'm sure for a lot of you, you either write in your own journal or you've been published in articles and things like that, and being able, you probably, all of us have a story in us, but being able to start with a chapter rather than creating that whole book, it was such an easy process and really enjoyable process. And the other thing is, now in my title, I have #1 best-selling author. So when I do, or if I do decide to do that book on my own, I'm starting from that position of leverage rather than an unknown and unpublished author. So that, you know, I mentioned finding the easiest pathways, and that's so important. And life should be fun, business should be fun, it should be easy. We often make it a lot harder. That finding those easier pathways to, in this case, to getting published was just really quite joyful as well. And the networks and the collaboration also with the other women that we worked with in the book, I've really enjoyed. We're on each other's podcasts, we share each other's information. It's just been a really amazing experience. So there are ways to monetize it to get your return on investment that way. It would be similar to self-publishing, but as I said, when you're self-publishing, it's just you on your own. That's a lot of energy to be able to push and market and sell. But when you're doing it as part of a collaboration in that co-author network, it's a lot easier, a lot more joyful, and yeah, expanding that reach. And if you were to pay separately for the amount of that amount of promotions that you would get, it would cost, well, easily hundreds, but thousands, and maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what it's done for me as well is it's helped me get other media exposure. So I talk a lot about leverage and leveraging what you have to exponentially grow, and you're leveraging that collaboration and that community, but you also leveraging the fact that you've been published, and that helps you get other media exposure as well as speaking engagements, like so many opportunities. And yeah, it's been amazing. So the first book that I was in is this one, The Becoming an Unstoppable Woman, and you may have seen some posts in the group. To give you an idea, there you go, there's me down there, so you do get your face on the back of the book there as well. And as I said, the collaborations with all of those, that's through the She Rises community studio. They've been amazing to work with as well. And I found so much joy from the publishing experience. I mentioned creating the wine books, but I'm also creating some co-author opportunities. And if it's interesting for any of you, we will put a link in here as well to those books. So one is a business book. I mentioned about all of my businesses come from passions and turning those into successful businesses. Some of those multiple six figures, some 7-figure businesses as well. So turning your passion into profit is one of my passions. So the business book that we're doing as a co-author book is turning passion into profit. And if you have a business where you've taken your passion and turned that into a successful business, we'd love to hear from you, because there is a co-author experience opportunity for that. And we also have one from one of my wellness businesses as well, sharing if you've done this for yourself, or maybe you've done it for clients, is healing chronic pain such an important topic. And there's still a few co-author opportunities for that one as well, and we'll post the links to those. So Patty's already done it for me. Patty, who is our team member based in Canada, she's just posted those links in there. Thank you, Patty, for sharing those. Happy to open up for a few more questions. We have a few more minutes in my time slot now. Hopefully that's helped inspire you in terms of opportunities and how you might see yourself getting published. Yes, you can do it on your own. The co-author opportunity I've just found really valuable, rewarding, and I love the collaboration of that. And as I said, for the reader, it's amazing as well, because they get to experience and your knowledge and share that across that collaboration and the group. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Jane. Great opportunity. And yeah, thanks for having me share this in the group. If you've got any questions, you can find us on those links there. And yeah, I hope that that's helped open some insight into how you might get published in 2022. And as I said, the co-author experience is not preventing you from going out and doing your own book at all. It's actually giving you a strong base and strong promotion to grow from when you are ready to create that full book on your own. Thanks for having me. Bye.